So what we're talking about today is about happiness, and happiness is an option. I don't know if you know the song by the Pet Shop Boys, but it's rather brilliant words, and it talks about happiness isn't easy, but it is an option. What I'm going to cover today is a bit about what Natalie said. Why is happiness important today? What is happiness? We use it all the time. We use that word, are you happy? Yes, I'm happy. How happy are you? But we'll do a bit of thinking about what do we actually mean when we talk about happiness. I'll then go slightly sideways into the question of, is more happiness always for the best? So hopefully at the end of this, you will have lots of thoughts about different ways to increase your happiness or how to keep yourself happy. But we will talk about the other side of that actually you can't really be happy if you don't let yourself have the other feelings as well. And then finally, we'll spend most of the time, and as I say, I'll get you to do things on thinking about how to take control of your happiness by doing the things that make you feel good, both now, literally, is it a chocolate bar, whatever it might be, or for the long term. 1.5 hours, no breakout rooms, exercises to reflect on alone. But before we go into any of that, I'm going to begin by telling you a story. And I want you to sit back and listen. And this is a story about a young person looking for happiness. I suppose it could be an older person as well. And they'd been looking for happiness for a while in all the places that they thought that they'd find it, opening doors, lifting stones, trying new paths, but still it eluded them. Until one day someone told them about the wise one on top of the mountain in the distance, and they suggested that this person make the journey there. The young person set off across a field and through a narrow path in a wood, making their way through until they came to a barrier across their way. And out of a small hut came a guard who came to them, and he gave them one instruction. If you're going to go on the journey looking for happiness and meet the wise one, I need you to do one thing. For everything you take from the wise one, you must be prepared to leave one thing in return. And if you are prepared to do that, then you can pass. The young person nodded, thinking to themselves, what will I leave behind for the gift of happiness? They passed through the barrier with that thought in their mind. In order to have happiness, what will I leave behind? And they came out into the daylight. Ahead of them, they could see the mountain peak and the route that they'd have to follow. And first they walked through a field with animals in it. And then they wandered around until they found a way out of that field and saw the sky overhead. And as they came out of the field, they turned onto a stony landscape, across which they trudged till they came to a wide river, and they slowly made their way across. Out on the other side of the rocky landscape, across the river, they could see the mountain becoming steeper and more barren. And after 2 hours of walking, they found themselves at the top of the mountain by the entrance to the wise one's home. They knocked and they entered, and they saw many other people also waiting to speak to the wise one. They were tired, they were thirsty, and they were hungry, and they sat down surrounded by other people also on a quest. Eventually, after quite a long wait, it was their turn to meet the wise one. Hello, the wise woman spoke. You must be tired after your journey. Did you eat? Did you get a drink? There are all these other people here to help you. But tell me, what is your question? And the young person, you replied, I'm searching for happiness. And the wise woman said, and what are you prepared to leave behind if I give you the key? So let me ask you, all of you now, that question. If you were given the key to happiness, what would you stop doing? What would you give up? Would you stop moaning? Would you stop seeing the worst in things? Would you stop avoiding your difficulties? Or maybe you'd give a gift to other people. Maybe you'd give more time to your friends, your family. Maybe you give more energy to other people. So I'd like you to write down for yourself now, in order to have more happiness, what's the one thing that you will give up or change or give more of to other people? So then the wise woman spoke again. And she said, okay, I'll take that. So here's my answer for you. The answer to happiness. So tell me, young person, tell me about your journey. Did you see the flowers in the field? Did you see the birds in the sky? Did you smell the air and enjoy using your body to carry you here? Did you find your way out of the field and across the river? Did you find an easy path or a difficult path? Did you enjoy the steep slope and the feeling of accomplishment when you reached the top? And did you ask for help, for water and for food from your fellow travellers? And did you engage with their stories? The wise woman spoke, and she said to you, turn round now and carry on your journey. Enjoy the pleasures in being alive, in your relationships with others and the rivers you cross, which are still to come. It's the hardships and the joys and the people you meet on the way that are the keys to your happiness. With that in mind, I'd like you again just to take a few seconds to write down anything that you're feeling having listened to the story of happiness. Just one thing I want to give you at the end of that story. I'm going to talk about a number of websites and podcasts. And there's one which is particularly relevant to that story. I don't know if any of you know it. There's a podcast called Bliss and Grit. It's actually finished now, but you can still, they're not doing any more episodes, I believe, but you can still get it on Spotify. And it's about, not surprisingly, in order to have happiness, you need those two things. Happiness is about bliss, all those enjoyable things, but it's also about the hard work. It's about the grit. You can't have one without the other. So why are we talking about happiness today? You know as well as I do, the world has been a challenging place recently, what with COVID restrictions, job losses, maybe not so much for all of you, but you may know people who are ill or even know someone sadly who's died. You probably all got questions about the future and the difficulties of finding small pleasures today. I'm going to, in a minute, when we talk about what is happiness, differentiate happiness in the moment and happiness as a well-led life. And generally, when you talk about happiness, the important thing is thinking about your whole life. But I actually think at the moment in this world, we're probably more interested, all of us, in what are the things that I can do now to make me feel happier in the moment. We all want some more interesting things. I keep going out looking for cake. I want different sorts of cake. They don't really make me feel happy, but they do for about 10 seconds. It's about how do we find those small pleasures in the strange world we find ourselves in. The other reason for talking about happiness is because life is a slog. I can tell you from my old age position up here, some of you are in the same part of your lives, many of you are much earlier on. Life is a journey, and actually there are many times in it that we all wonder about what is it for? In our 20s, I think most people are preoccupied with, will I get a job? Am I interested in my career? Can I ever afford to buy a house? Will I have a relationship that lasts? In our 30s and 40s, maybe we've got the house, maybe not so much nowadays, but we've got the job, maybe we've got the relationship, and people start wondering about what now? What's it for? What am I going to do with the rest of my life? And then let me tell you, when you get to your 50s, the questions become about what next? Is this it? Do I pack it all in? How do I carry on? How do I continue to refresh myself and carry on? And so finding happiness is part of life's journey. It's our quest. And the messages today is to really think about the journey of your life and also to look inside to yourself to work out what happiness is for you. I can tell you that there are some things outside that can make you more happy. Really, it comes from inside yourself. And with that, I'm going to share with you two of my, they're not my favourite quotes, but they are quotes that I think are useful. One on the left, talk about why happiness today. If you think about a life goal, if you keep this in mind, tension is who you think you should be. Relaxation is who you are. I love that idea of I don't know how much of my life I've spent trying to be somebody, thinking, wondering, worrying who I am, how I come across, could I get better? And actually, what I found, the benefit, the happiness that comes in life is actually, it's not about stopping learning, but it is about accepting myself, warts and all, knowing that I'm really good at some things and I'm really not good at other things. I really enjoy some things and I really don't enjoy other things. I'm not perfect. It doesn't matter if people laugh at some of the things I don't do very well. I'm more comfortable laughing at them now. And so happiness is partly about allowing yourself to enjoy who you are. And then, as Eleanor Roosevelt says, happiness, I can't see it because I've got all these lovely pictures on top. Happiness is not a goal, it's a byproduct of a life well lived. It's a journey, it's not a destination. So let's talk a bit about, oops, move on to the next slide. What is happiness? Yeah. So I mentioned this before. It's very ill-defined, but there are two bits of happiness that we're generally talking about when we mention happiness. Happiness is a state. It's in the moment. It's a measure of how I feel right now. In that Chinese proverb I sent you describing the beginning of this, it's the 1 hour. Happiness is that 1 hour they talk about after a nap, but maybe after you've had a chocolate bar, in my case, chocolate buttons. After you've had a laugh, you've laughed with someone, after you've done a good piece of work. It's the last thing that happened. It's a feeling of pleasure or contentment, and it's not that intense. So for all of us, we can at any moment in time decide how happy we feel. And I think this is the bit that has hit us all through COVID. Those moments of pleasure are more difficult to come by because things are a bit more static, a bit more all the same. And we have to be more creative in finding that we can't go out for a drink, we can't go to a restaurant, we can't really meet many people at the moment. And so we have to find new and different ways of having that state of pleasure. The second description of happiness is that's the lifetime learning. It's a measure of what they call subjective well-being. Overall, how happy are we with our life as a whole? It's about our quality of life. It's about thinking about how happy am I now and how much do I believe in the future things will be as they are or be better or maybe be worse. And what I'd like you each to do now, and I'm going to take it off the screen at the moment, this is where I do want you to give me a wave, not necessarily show your hand, your faces in just one moment. So I want you to think about, on a scale from 1 to 10, thinking about your life overall. I just want you to put down on a piece of paper a rating from 1 to 10. 1 is really not at all, 10 is absolutely. We're not going to get you to share the absolute number. How happy are you with your life overall? The next question, and I mentioned it at the beginning, there is a question to all of you about, and I would love to hear your answers, but I can't at the moment. Well, you can call out if you think so. Do you think that we should continue to search for more and more happiness? Is that a useful goal? So I don't know whether you can seek more and more happiness. I think being happy is a useful goal. But the bit I want to get across to you is the idea that actually, in order to have more happiness, you've got to be comfortable with your other feelings as well. And that's a really important message. That it's only by allowing ourselves to have all of our feelings, sadness, anger, fear, rage, jealousy, whatever it might be, that we can be truly happy. And the reason for that is that all of our feelings are what make us feel alive. And if we deny those other feelings, we live our life in the grey zone. If we're afraid of feeling sad, angry, upset, fearful, jealous, if we're afraid of those feelings and pretend we don't feel them, what are we doing? We're dampening it down. And if we dampen down our other feelings, actually we dampen down our happiness too. We avoid things. We keep away from difficult relationships. We keep away from doing things that make us feel anxious. We keep away from having those difficult relationships, difficult conversations with people that can move things on. If you really want to feel happiness at its best, it's really, really important to face into your other feelings, because the other feelings will give you data. They'll tell you when something's not right. They'll tell you about the work you have to do. And having that emotion and listening to that emotion helps us solve issues, helps us solve problems, helps us be braver in our relationships to sort things out. And even when we can't sort things out, at least it leaves us able to know that we need to move on. Through having other emotions, we unblock our pain. And by unblocking our pain, that's really where happiness comes from. Happiness comes from you being comfortable with all your feelings. And I do like this quote from Mahatma Gandhi. Happiness is when what you feel, what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. Happiness is not about pretending. If you think for a moment about yourselves, I think of my life like a staircase. And the problem with the image of a staircase, it is how I think of my life, is most people think that's going to be a really difficult journey and you're always climbing uphill. And it isn't because of that I think of it as a staircase. I think of my life, for a lot of the time, I'm above a 7 on that rating. Most of the time, it's sort of really good. It's on that flat bit of the staircase. Life is okay. Things are working out. Relationships are good. I'm able to do what I want. Things feel good. But I know, and I've experienced it all throughout my life, that every so often I will hit the riser on the stairs. And when I hit the riser on the stairs, I don't feel happy. I might feel really upset. I might feel really afraid. I might feel shame, whatever it is. But I know I have something to sort out. And what I've come to learn from life is that it's through sorting out that difficult bit that I move on to the next bit, when I move on to another bit of a fulfilled life where I feel really, really good about things. And it does feel like I get more of it as I work through those things. But the bit I hold for myself is there isn't an end. There isn't a point where there'll never be anything difficult. The whole point of life is to keep walking towards those things. Happiness is when what you feel, what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. So I'm going to now move on to all the activities, and I'm going to do much less talking and get you to do lots and lots of things. So how do you take control of your happiness? As I said, I sent you this proverb before, and I think that is what I'm going to talk about, and they're all true. If you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. 1 hour. It's about a time to be nice to yourself. It's in the moment. We need it on a day when we're feeling stressed. We need it on a day when we've been at home alone or with the same people again and again and again. I think that first one and the second one are particularly important in life at the moment. If you want happiness for an hour, take a nap, eat a chocolate bar, have a piece of cake, brush your hair, put on some lipstick, whatever it might be. It's momentary, makes you feel good. It's important. If you want happiness for a day, go fishing or go for a walk or go and sit outside or go and watch a film that you really want to watch that you haven't allowed yourself time to do. That happiness for a day is about being in your body. It's about reflecting. It's about changing things. I was going to say go and have a massage, but you can't go and do that. But it is, particularly in this world, it is about using your body. It is about being physical, enjoying outside, getting up and going for a walk, having a conversation with your colleagues while you're all walking. If you want happiness for a year, inherit a fortune. There's some lovely, lovely research which says that after a year of winning the lottery, you'll be no more happy than you were a year ago. No more happy than you were a year ago. It'll make you feel wonderful for a while, but basically it doesn't change your life. I mean, it changes what you can spend your money on. But the reasons for it is actually, and this won't be true of all of you, that money doesn't make us more happy once we have about £50,000 a year. So it's not going to be true for all of you that you're there yet. But if you think of it as a goal, it's not about having more and more and more and more money. All the studies have shown that once you have about £50,000 a year, no more money, it gives you more choices, it allows you to spend more money on certain things, but it doesn't make you happier than having that amount of money. So inherit a fortune, I am going to win the lottery, but it won't make me really happy. It'll make me feel happy for a minute, but not forever. And then the final one is, if you want happiness for a lifetime, help someone else. If you want happiness for a lifetime, help someone else. Think of other people. There's a study done by Harvard. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. It's a longitudinal study that they followed a group of men for over 80 years. They started the study when they were undergraduates, first year of Harvard, aged 18, and they followed them really into, I think there are about 15 of them alive now, about 300 of them. And after about 10 years, they actually brought in a second group. They compared them to not a group of Harvard students, but a group of young men of the same age living in Boston. And they followed them throughout life. And what they found was that the thing that all of them considered a happy life was the quality of their relationships and the community that they found themselves in. The things they did with and for other people are what made for a happy life. So, taking control of your own happiness. An equation, bit of maths for you, not really. What are the things that make us satisfied with life? It's doing things you enjoy that give you pleasure, whether it's the chocolate bar, whether it's doing the bits of your job you're good at. Doing the things that really engage you. It's that moment where the job you're doing takes over and you forget how quickly time is passing. There's some evidence that what gives us most satisfaction are jobs that we feel 80% confident, but we have to work sort of 20% to get it right. If it's much less than that, we start getting stress. So doing the things that we feel we really enjoy and that engage us. And then finally, doing the things that give us meaning, that fit with our higher purpose. I'm working with a particular client at the moment, which is a mental health charity. And I'm just amazed by the number of people they have there who have left high-paid, high-powered corporate jobs because they didn't feel in the end it gave them meaning, and they wanted to do something that gave more back to society and wasn't, as one of them said yesterday, just about making rich people richer. So no matter where you get that meaning, life satisfaction, things you enjoy, things that engage you, things that give you meaning, and that you have the motivation for and persevere at. That bliss and grit. Bliss comes from the top line, grit is the bit underneath. You cannot be happy without also working hard. Imagine if I gave you a chocolate bar every hour. How long would that last before it didn't make you happy? If I got you to do some work and the reward was the chocolate bar you wanted, how much longer would you carry on being happy? Make sense? So we're going to go on and we're going to do some exercises now that help you think about what gives you enjoyment, what you can do to increase your enjoyment, what you can do to increase your engagement, and what you can do to increase your meaning. Okay, and I've taken the screen off. I'm going to talk to you now and get you need paper, pens, write down, and I may ask you to share some things with me. So how many of you have a kindness log? You don't need to answer that, you just need to think about it. But one of the ways of increasing our enjoyment is to notice each day, every day, what you've done, which is kind, and also to notice when other people do kind things. Hi there. one of the things that's been shown to increase our enjoyment with life is that we notice those things that are kind. So what I'd like you to do now, each of you, is to write down 5 things that you'll do over the next week. So it's Wednesday today, between now and next Wednesday, that are small acts of kindness. It could be sending a lovely email to someone who you haven't said thank you to. It might be phoning a friend. It might be giving £5 to someone homeless you see on the street. It doesn't matter what it is. What would be 5 things that you're going to do in the next week that are small acts of kindness? I'd like you to write that down now. So next thing, another thought about how to get enjoyment. This isn't expensive. But we've got Christmas coming up, hopefully, fingers crossed, all the rest of it. And we haven't got much time to go shopping, and most people don't feel desperately confident about money. But actually, people often don't really want a gift of a thing from you. What they want is the gift of time. People like sharing experiences, and they like having time with people they care about. And so I'd like you to think about, instead of giving people a gift for Christmas, how about giving them a promise? On my 50th birthday, my family gave me a box of promises. They actually gave me 50, which is far too much. You don't need to think of that number. But they gave me, as a present, a box with 50 cards in it, each of which had a promise. And they were things like, I'll go for a walk with you. They were, I'll buy you a bunch of flowers. They were small things and an awful lot of, I'll cook supper for you. I'll take you to a restaurant, whatever it might be. And the idea of the gift was I could hand them out when I wanted to use them. I'm not suggesting you do 50 for people at Christmas, but I would like you to write down 3 gifts of time and for whom you'd like to give out this Christmas. And imagine putting that in the Christmas card to people. The next thing that makes people happy, and it also makes us happy because we're doing it, is to give people recognition. Give them appreciation. And so the question is, how often at work do you start your meetings with recognition? And I mean by that really specific, saying, whoever it might be, Bill, I don't think you've got a Bill in your business, really appreciated when you, whatever it might be. So how about if you were to start your meetings with recognition for other people there. The other bit people have found really makes other people happy, and it makes us happy because we're doing it, is when we write a few emails saying thank you and why, not just thank you for coming to that meeting today, thank you for doing that for me, but being really, really specific and precise with people about what it is that we appreciate them for. I have a friend who, every time she sends birthday cards to people, she fills the whole of the writing up inside. It doesn't say wishing you a happy birthday. It says, Arabella, you're a beautiful person who makes me feel happy because when we go on a walk, we talk about lovely things, whatever it might be. And I know that Tess does that to everybody. But I also know I love it when I get it. It makes me feel just thought about for a minute. And so I'd like you to just think for a minute about what could be 2 emails which you could send in the next few days to your colleagues, to your clients, to your family, saying thank you for something, and not just thanks, but being really specific with them about why. I have another client, actually, I'd forgotten until I was saying that, who sends cards to people, and not birthday cards, he sends note cards to people. If you've done something, not all the time, but he'll send them to people in his business, and he'll send them to people who've done work for him, that make people feel really, really special. The And the next one is something that actually for me is one of the 3 things that I take off the list. And when I was reading about it, I thought that was really brilliant. And it happened at a time when I needed to do it. This was about what they call the 1 to 3, 1 door closed to 3 open. So it's thinking about something that hasn't gone well. And then stopping yourself, instead of thinking about what hasn't gone well, thinking about what has happened that is positive by you not getting what you thought you wanted. What was the win that came out of that? And I'll give a better example of this, that I was asked by a client who runs a large part of the National Health Service, that they wanted to use Character Scope, which is our online leadership and team app, right across the organisation. And they wanted us to give it to everyone for free because the NHS is having a difficult time in COVID. But they also wanted us to add various things to it. And they told us that the benefit that would come from it in the end, obviously we were helping all these people, so we were made to feel guilty. But anyway, the benefit that would come from all of this, and it would get across to 250,000 managers across the NHS, which has to be good marketing and sales. But they wanted us to do the changes. And one person said that they'd give us about £150,000, which might sound like a huge amount of money, but for everything we were giving them and the changes we were making, it wasn't a lot. And then eventually my client said, no, it was only 25,000. And at that point, we said no. We said no because our business would collapse. We wouldn't have enough money to pay everybody, let alone do the changes they wanted. And I felt really angry with her. But actually afterwards, I did this flip, 1 door closing and 3 doors open. Because what I realized that the benefit of her saying 25 grand is we didn't do it. If she'd said 150, we probably would have done it and not have done it very well and still have felt used. But because it was such a ridiculous sum, it allowed us to say no. And actually what came out of it was partly the thinking about how on earth we do it, also thinking about what we valued about ourselves and we weren't going to do something for nothing, but also the learning that we needed to be careful of what we did. So I'd like you to think about something that you didn't get, something that went wrong, and just flip it and write down 1, 2, 3 benefits that came from you not getting to go out with that man that you fancied, not getting the promotion you wanted, not winning the piece of business with the client, whatever it is. What's the benefit that it came from it? Final one on the engagement, and then we'll go, on the enjoyment, then we'll go on to engagement. And it's a negative one as well, but it's about spinning something negative into something positive again. I'd like you to think about a person this time, someone that you feel negative about. They've upset you, they've made you cross. And now reverse the position. Present all the positives from their side. So the example I'll give you is I was feeling really pissed off with my brother because just before COVID, we arranged to go for coffee and then it all closed down. Then we had a conversation and then he hasn't called me since. And so I was thinking, how dare you? And then I realized I actually haven't called him. But I thought about it from his point of view. And I thought, well, actually, he probably feels that people don't contact him. Do I, and the rest of my family, when I say all, do we care about him? Am I thinking about him? And though, of course, he could think about it from my point of view, from doing that, it made me realize that actually maybe he's more anxious about being, in case I didn't want to speak to him than I thought. And so it allowed me to pick up the phone and say hello. And he was, of course, delighted to hear from me. So someone or something that you feel negative about, reverse your position, present the negatives from the other side. And then we will just do one final bit on that before I can move on to a different bit, which is my daughter has a boyfriend who's Swedish, and he says they have a phrase, Swedish phrase, do we have it in this country, which is happiness comes from small changes. Happiness comes from small changes. So I would like you to think about 5 very small changes that you can make to your life. I moved where I have my desk. Change the coffee cup that you're using. Put up some fairy lights in your room. Don't need to wait till Christmas. They make people feel happy now. What might be 5 small changes that you could make to your life at the moment when we can't go outside and do all those things? Very small changes that would bring you new enjoyment. Just jot down some thoughts now. Sleep on the other side of the bed, walk somewhere different, use a different bowl, move your chair, whatever comes to your mind. Happiness consists more in small pleasures that occur every day than in great pieces of good fortune that happen only seldomly in the course of a life. Happiness consists more in small pleasures that occur every day. And we have to be really creative at the moment because we can't do the things that we used to do that make us happy. Those were some real sheep. I took that picture. I don't know about the thing going around the outside of it, but going for a walk a few years ago, and they were driving the sheep down the hill. It seemed like something out of Heidi, whatever the old film that I'd watched was. That made me happy. So that's about enjoyment, doing small things to change your feeling of happiness. The other bit is engagement. This is about what it is that you can do to really get yourself motivated and into something where time flows away. So this is an activity for each of you. I'd like you to write for about 3 minutes about a time where you did a fantastic job. It could be inside or outside work. It could be recently or a long, long time ago. And I'd like you just to find an image of a time when you felt you were really doing a great job. It was using everything that you bring to work. And I'd like you just to write about what did you do? What did you feel? What was it? Just write down for a bit about times when you did. And you felt really good. Now I'd like you to think that time when you felt you were doing a really, really good job. I'd like you to think about 3 strengths, 3 of your strengths that you were drawing on when you were doing that good job. Was it your intelligence? Was it your relationship skills? Was it your ability to sort out complexity? And maybe many, many different things, but 3 of your strengths that you really used that time when you were doing a great job. And then with those 3 strengths, just think for a minute about how could you use those 3 strengths more this week? And literally write down where could you use them in 3 things that are coming up this week. How could you use them more? And the story in that is we do our best work when we're using our strengths. We don't do our best work when we're working from our gaps. We do our best work when we're working from our strengths. And the more we know what those strengths are, the more we know what we're like when we're really in that flow, the more we can take it and use it in other things. One other way to be more engaged, and for me this is a difficult one, and I'll talk about why, is to learn something new. Some people are really good at being a learner. They're really good at taking something they want to learn and being really comfortable going through the phases of learning. Maybe Sean is. And trying it out and not being embarrassed about not knowing. Some people go and get a coach. Some people look online at YouTube videos. Some people just sit down and work out what they need to do. And the reason I said it's hard for me is I know I don't like that feeling of not being able to do something. And sometimes because of it, if I'm not careful, I can just do it in a slapdash way and get just okay at it and not really, really good at it. But I do know that when I really let myself learn something new and be comfortable with not being good at it yet, I've really, really enjoyed the outcome. And so one of the ways that you can really be more engaged is to choose something new to learn. And I'm not going to ask you to choose it now, but do think about, is there something that I could learn? And learning it doesn't need to be a completely brand new skill. It might be you going to, the thing I'm working on at the moment is a different way of cooking. I'm really, really good at opening the fridge, taking things out and making a meal. What I'm much less good at doing is thinking 1 or 2 days ahead of what I want to make, making sure I've got everything to make it, and really not just following the recipe, but creating something. And if I don't do that, I get really bored with food. So the bit I'm learning at the moment is how to think a day or 2 days in advance about what I'm going to make and plan for it. That's quite new for me. So think about one thing that you could learn. One of the other bits that seems to get people really, really engaged is when we have a great conversation. You know, that feeling of when you really talked with someone, and whether, again, it's a personal relationship or work relationship, where you've really got to the bottom of something, you feel that you've really talked it through. And the evidence is that what makes for a great conversation is where people are listening, actively listening to other people and really understanding both sides' views and thinking about where they're different, what they can use it for and how they can learn from each other and being curious about each other. It's called taking an and stance, where you're really trying to understand where someone else is coming from. I had an example recently, which was I discovered one of my very good friends, and this is my values, so you don't have to have the same ones. I was absolutely appalled that I discovered that she had voted for Brexit and she'd voted for Johnson. And I really, really like her. And because it goes against my values, I couldn't believe it. And I thought, I can't just sit with that and not have anything. And I can't have a conversation where I talk about all the reasons why my view is right and all the reason her views are wrong and her doing the other way around. I thought we have to be able to learn from this. And we had a really, really interesting conversation about how on earth we could hold such different views and yet share what we thought was some similar values. And it took both of us to really listen and ask questions to understand the other person's point of view. So if you want to be in flow, have a great conversation and practice that. One of the other bits I'm very struck by is quite a lot about body language and how to be more engaged. Yeah, how we sit, how we stand. And there's also a lot about eye movement. Do you know about eye movement therapy? Eye movement therapy is where they found that by getting people to move their eyes in certain ways, they can get them to unlock really painful old memories, which are stuck in places. And one of the things I'm struck by in this current world we're in is how much of your time do you spend with your head down, either looking at the computer or looking at your desk? I spend so much of my time doing that at the moment, so much less time sitting back. It's with my head down like that. And the bit about eyes, do you know the phrase feeling downright awful or feeling downright horrible? And the evidence is when we're feeling downright awful, do you know where we look? We look down and to the right. If you're looking up at the sky, we don't feel awful. If our head's down here, down right, we feel depressed. And so the bit about feeling happier in the moment, if you find yourself not feeling happy, and particularly in this world where we're sitting at our desks, is to look up, gaze out of the window look at the sky, look at the horizon, and do some thinking with your head up and really make that a conscious practice. I'm looking at the screen and my head's going down. Because when we look out there and we gaze out there, we start to see things differently. We see more possibilities. Whereas if we spend our whole time with our head down right, we feel overwhelmed by things. So one of the things I'd get you to practice is every few minutes, look up, look out, and sit back and think from here, not just head down. And remind each other when you're on a Zoom call together, remind everyone, let's just sit for a minute and look out the window and talk while that's going on, or think while you look out there. And just for those of you who find yourself ever in a meeting where you find yourself feeling tearful and you don't want to cry, the bit on eye movement therapy is if you do it now, look up and across and round, might look a bit weird. You can move your feelings. The other thing you can do is stand up, walk around, but ideally look out of the window and you'll come back to the conversation and feel less bad about things. As I say, I'm really struck by how much of my time has increased looking down and right, and we need to look up and out and across. 2 final exercises, and then we'll go back to talking about the so what. Now, this is about where do we get meaning in life? And I think meaning at the moment is really, really important, but it also feels a bit pointless, whereas at the moment we're just trying to get through. And that's why I think do the things that make you feel happy, do the things that make you feel alive. Make sure that you give yourself those opportunities to go for a walk, to have a chocolate bar, to go and do something different at any time. But actually, broadly, what really makes us happy is having some sense of purpose in life. Those moments where we're wondering, we need to create an appetite, a desire to create meaningful purpose for ourselves and for other people. I'm going to get 2 activities for you to do now. The first one is to think about your positive self at work, a bit like we did before, but it's a future imagining thing. I'd like you to imagine yourself where everything has gone as well as it possibly could do at work. Imagine yourself at the end of a meeting, at the end of a day, at the end of a week, where everything has gone as well as it possibly could. I'd like you just to jot down on your paper, what kind of person would you be in that situation where everything has gone as well as it could? How would you be holding your body? How would you be standing or sitting? What would be the thoughts in your mind? What would your voice be like? What would the feelings inside you be? What kind of person would you be when everything had gone as well as it possibly could? The more you can physically know, being the person that you'd really love to be, the more you know how you hold yourself, how much you move, how your shoulders are, how your face is, what you do with your hands, quality of your voice, what you're looking at, your confidence, your thoughts, your feelings, your relationships with other people. And then next to that, write down how far away you are from being that person today. What are the things that you notice that are missing in how you are today? And now these are the really important bits. What are your plans for moving towards that person? What's one small change that you can make today which will get you closer to being there? So what have we said? don't know which things. I'd like you to think about which are some of those things that you might do. But really, the question is, how are you going to take control of your happiness? And this work comes from, I'm afraid I've forgotten who they're called. They're the Happiness Agency, I think they're called, and I'll remember if it's called something different. And they basically summarize what helps us be happy into 2 columns: how we interact with the world and our attitude to life. And their mnemonic is, how do you have a great dream? By giving and being generous to other people makes us feel happy. Think about how you can do that in small ways by giving gifts of time, attention. Relating by building strong and broad relationships. Strong and broad relationships. We like to have some which last over time, but we also like to meet a variety of people. And that requires us to be brave and ask people some questions to get to know them. What helps us be happy is exercise and care about both our physical and our mental health. Our mental health is often helped by our physical health. There are lots of studies on depression, and that people who start walking or running find that or actually outdoor swimming, they've been saying a lot of recently, help us feel good about our mental health by using our bodies. If you want to be happy, make sure you build in exercise. Pay attention to the here and now, enjoy it, have that chocolate bar sometimes, go for that walk, look out of the window. And then, as I've said, try out and learn new things. We get happy by having variety in our life. And as I say, I think a really important message, and maybe it's just because it's a message for myself, is really learning how to learn new things. That can be a huge pleasure for people. And then attitude to life, which are the things that are harder to get hold of in this current COVID world. One is about choosing your direction and setting your future goals, thinking not so, as we know, the evidence on goal setting is if our goals feel too far away, too big, we'd be better off not setting them at all. It's about thinking of your future as something that's achievable, setting your direction in everything you do. What is it that I'm going to learn by doing this thing now? What do I want to achieve by doing this thing over the next year, 2 years? Again, in terms of roles, I met with a really interesting headhunter who said, talking about direction and setting future goals, never just look for the next role. Think about 2 roles ahead. And then ask yourself, how will the next role I want to do help me get to the role 2 roles out? Why? Because it's, again, thinking not just about, do I get this job, but what is it that I want in the future? Be resilient, and that's about really doing your work and choosing how to feel about pain, about shame or mistakes. We all have them. There isn't a single person in this world who hasn't done things that are painful, shameful, or have gone wrong. We all have. And learning to do that flip of what have I learnt from the things that didn't work out is really, really important. As I said, emotions are a really good, useful source of data. Pay attention to them, talk to them, ask them what they're trying to tell you. What can you learn from that feeling? And then also accept yourself and your reality. Love yourself for who you are, not who you think you might be. And then finally, being part of something bigger, thinking about how does my being here matter to the world. As I said at the beginning, what did the wise one say? Enjoy your journey, look at the sky, smell the flowers, take a walk, and know that, I've got one more thing to give you, and know that you cannot have happiness without also putting in some effort and pain. And there is one thing I forgot to say, but I do think it's fabulous. And I think any one of you, if you don't know it, it's worth taking a look at. There is, it's not an app, it is a computer game called Kind Words, and then in brackets, and you do have to type this all in, lo-fi chill beats to write to, close brackets. So if you just type in kind words, all sorts of things come up. So you have to look for kind words, in brackets, lo-fi, as in hi-fi, chill beats to write to. And it's a fantastic little game which allows you to do two things. One, if you're feeling down or miserable or stuck, to send a note out. And the second part is for you to respond to people's worries, notes, and to give them a bit of your advice. It absolutely is anonymous. No one knows who you are. No one is allowed to put anything about themselves. They absolutely stop all trolling, all bad feelings. Those people are chased off the site. And so it's just a really nice way of giving 5 minutes help a day to other people in the world who are struggling with things. But also, if you're the person struggling with things, it's a really nice way of getting some advice from people who you never need to meet, never need to see. You don't even need to take their advice anyway, but it's just useful to hear it. So I'd highly recommend looking at that too. With that, I don't know if you're happy because I can't see you. Enjoy.